Hello, everyone. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and recently I said off the cuff that I didn't think the MTA would have the same risk of having layoffs that the rest of New York City and the New York City teachers would face because the MTA just received, a big chunk of federal funding. Yeah, I'm an idiot. What it comes down to, we dug a little bit deeper, and back on October 23rd, there was a press conference, and the press conference was really aimed at like letting riders know the subway's safe. Okay, great. But the more important takeaway from that conference was that the New York State Comptroller was very upfront. He said, "Listen, without $12 billion in federal funding, the New York City subway and all the trans, Metro North, Long Island Railroad, the exact quote that he gave was, it could be the end, I'll read it up. It could be the end of public transit in New York City as we know it, without 12 billion, end quote, without $12 billion of federal funding." So, the takeaway there is the state and the city are both being run really poorly, and they can't afford their own subways, their own local trains, right? And they need the feds to pay for it. And the feds aren't doing that great either. They don't really care. The current regime in power hates Cuomo, hates De Blasio. They're not going to help. They think it's great that New York City's in trouble, right? Here's the kicker, okay? The $12 billion, because we say $12 billion a lot, because we believe $12 billion is how much New York City is short right now, right? Nobody really knows. Even the New York City, finance department, I don't believe really knows how much New York City is short right now. Which is amazing. How do they not know? But we believe it's around $12 billion that New York City is short. This new $12 billion, this is an additional $12 billion that the MTA needs, not the city itself, but the MTA, just the MTA, to keep transit alive in New York City and around New York City, okay? And it really is a big deal. So they're saying that they're going to have to reduce Long Island Railroad and Metro North by up to 50%. Half of all trains gone, right? And they're saying they're going to have to reduce subway and buses by about 40%. And these changes, they're up for approval by the MTA as soon as December. These changes, they're right around the corner. It is October 27th today. These changes could be approved to go into effect in December 2020. And that's a really big deal, because if you're running half the trains, half the buses, 40% the buses, 40% the subways, half the trains, the regional trains, you're just not going to need the same staffing. And part of the savings tied to cutting that service is going to be paying fewer employees because you don't have the money to pay staff. Okay, so I previously said, I don't think the MTA is going to face the same potential layoffs that New York City employees and New York City teachers will. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case anymore. Things are getting pretty crazy, and they're not really scheduled to get better. The MTA believes they're going to have an additional $19 billion in shortfall on top of this $12 billion, an additional $19 billion in shortfall between now and 2024. Now, unless we really, really revamp how efficiently we run these agencies and how things are done, I think that translates into layoffs. I'm sorry to say that. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I'm very concerned about this, and it's something we're going to keep an eye on. Stay safe out there, everybody.